Hello, people. Bonjour. Welcome to Circuit Paul Ricard here in France. One of the nicer tracks, I would say. I like this track, but again, not in the game because of how absurdly you have to cut the corners to gain some time and all that nonsense. However, if done correctly, this track is still fun to hot lap, fun to race. And here we are for another hot lap and setup guide. And let's jump into the setup straight away. Now, just a quick reminder, just in case you hear some knocking and all drillings at the background. Yeah, neighbors are having renovations and all that good stuff as usual. We'll just ignore that and pretend like we are in a garage. So setup for fronts, 29, 22 on the wings. It is sort of mid downforce level around here. You'll need plenty of top speed for the back straight. For the Mistral straight, basically it's divided by a chicane, right? So the two Mistral straights, the first and the second part of it, you'll need good top speed in order to overtake someone and to regenerate battery quite easily around here. Battery is super hard to regenerate first of all, so having low downforce as always is going to help you regenerate more battery. You can adjust the front wing according to your preference. If you feel the setup overall is a bit understeer, you can always add some aero to it. If you feel it's oversteer, you can always reduce the front wing or you can increase the rear wing. So I'd say somewhere around 22, 23 is just fine for the rear wing around here in order to get a good balance between downforce and also top speed and also regenerating battery around here. So for the race, I'll definitely be using like 28 because time trial is a bit understeery for my feeling. I always go a bit high on the front wing, but you can always stick to whatever you feel best. Make sure you practice with it first of all. Now transmission, 55 on throttle seems to be again a good balance like all track. You can go 50 maybe in a qualifying, but be careful when accelerating in slow speed on the curbs. You can over rotate the rears by going too low on the on throttle. So 55 is somewhere, I'd say the good range to be on. In the race, you can always go up to 60, while when the tires start to wear out, you don't want to push the tires too much or rotate the tires too much on acceleration. You can go higher. 55 should be just nice for the qualifying either way. Off throttle, again, this is just you use this to make sure the car behaves as you want it when you're coasting especially. And before you get back on throttle, sometimes the car is a little bit unstable. You can go a bit higher on the off throttle. I say don't go any higher than 54 or maybe 55 is the maximum you want to go in any track, because when you start going higher, it starts to affect your entry corner speed. It starts to get a lot more understeery. So conversely, if you go lower, it's going to be a lot more open. That means it allows the car to rotate a little bit more off throttle when you're braking as well, but it's prone to locking up the rears, or you may lose your rear if your car is already loose enough to begin with. So 53 is a balance I found to be good, and equally good for 54 in qualifying or race, whichever you prefer to use. So I'd say I'll go 54 for the race, just because race it tends to get a bit scary at the double right-handers and pretty much the entire track. 53 is just to push the corners a bit more. Suspension geometry, right, left, it's pretty much the easiest way to set up your car in the suspension geometry tab. This is the easiest way to drive the car, and arguably there are better combinations and whatnot for certain tracks, and things like this and all whatnot. You may get better cornering performance as well. All depends on how you drive as well. If it is faster for you, go for it. If you're not feeling confident with that, just always come back to this. It's pretty much like the golden rule for suspension geometry. Now for suspension, this is where again you can make the car behave as you want it. If let's say on entry you want it to be more understeery or more oversteery, on exits as well, you want to adjust the car behavior. If it's bottoming out on curbs and whatnot, everything can be done around here. So first of all, suspension, 31 on the front, 11 on the rear, so right around where you'd expect it. I'm not going full 41 here because there are quite a bit of slow speed corners around here in France, especially the small Mickey Mouse chicane before the first Mistral straight. That part you're going to be needing a bit of mechanical grip, so you want the front suspension to be a bit softer. And I've lowered the rear suspension a little bit compared to the world record setup, which is initially at 15, 25, 15 overall. It's quite oversteer. It has a lot of rotation for sure, but for a race it's not really ideal for me. So 31 on the front, and then just a bit lower on the rear, just to give me a bit better traction coming out of corners, and also to make it a little less slidey in the high speed corners. So if you feel like the car is not turning enough, the rear is not rotating enough on the double right handers or all the long corners, you can always go like maybe 1 or 2 clicks high on the rear suspension to start with. Front anti-roll bar, well, you don't want it too high either. If you go lower, it helps you on the corner entry and mid corner. The car rotates a lot more. If you go too high, the car starts to be understeering on entry and mid corner. Although if you increase your this front anti-roll bar, it can help you to stabilize the car on mid corner to exit phases where you are constantly on traction. So 4 is where I found the balance for me. If you feel you need the car to turn a bit more mid corner or on the entry, you can always lower it. You can even run 1 actually, just perfectly balanced here. If you feel like the car is too snappy, you can try going a bit higher, 5 or 6. Don't go any higher than that, then otherwise you'll have to make compromises everywhere else on the setup in order to, you know, get the car going fast. Rear anti-roll bar, you can increase this, but be careful again. It helps in high speed corners, long high speed corners. It helps to turn the car. It gets the car rotated quickly in quick direction changes, but it's going to make your car a little bit more nervous, so it's going to be a bit more unstable if you cannot handle it. So proceed with caution. Like I said, world record setup does something funny like 110, a lot of rotation, but it is generally not the best way to drive for a race. So you want the car be a bit more stable in the race so you can put down the power, go attack someone, right? Ride height, this is also again questionable how much you want. It really depends on, first of all, how much downforce you have. So we have somewhere mid-level downforce around here, 28, 22. So it's going to, you know, push the car quite a bit onto the ground. So you need some ground clearance. So somewhere around 32 to 35 on the front is the range you want to be going with. And then it also interacts with your front suspension. The lower you go on the front suspension, say you go down 5 clicks for example here, you may have to increase your ride height by 1 or 2 clicks. So that's how, you know, the simple rule of thumb is for suspension and the ride height. Similarly for the rear, if you go low on the rear suspension, you have to increase your rear ride height to get the same effect. And now around Spain, no, I was going to say Spain, around France, you want the car to be rotating a bit in the high speed, so you want stiffer rear suspension just a little bit like this. So you can go a bit low on the rear ride height, maybe 38 or 39 is just nice. And this setting is safe enough on the curve, they do not bottom out. If I tried 33, 32, they definitely seem a bit more sketchy, although the car seems to be a lot more responsive in the slower corners. But in the high speed, they are a little bit unstable because, you know, there's a lot of downforce in the car. You want the car to be stable in the high speed as well. You can use the brakes to rotate the car in the slow speed, so that's where we're heading to next. Now 52 on the brake bias, which is something you can use in qualifying conditions or even in time trial, because the car is pretty light, you have a lot more grip. And maybe 53 for the heavier braking zone like the chicane at Mistral Straight, right? So, and then maybe the last corner or wherever you feel like the car is a bit unstable, you can go up on the brake bias. In the race, you'll be using somewhere around 55, 56 maybe even. 55 is just safe enough to use on the race. 56 maybe if you feel like the car is a bit twitchy. Now we move on to the final part, which is the tire pressures. I've done a sprint race only before this, but I've also done a practice on it with the same setup. And, so I can safely say that you know, these pressures are safe enough to use if it's fully sunny condition. Example, you can see on the bottom right here in time trial, it's fully sunny. So if it's the same conditions in your race, you can use this in combination with your lower downforce. So that's a good combo as well. Usually when you have low downforce, you can probably go a little bit higher on your pressures, maybe 1 or 2 clicks, so you get a bit more heat into the tires through the natural pressure itself. And if your tires are overheating around here, so you definitely want to reduce your tire pressures so that you, well, don't overheat and you have enough grip left in the tires. And there you go, 28, 22, you can even go 29, 20, 30 maybe, 27, up to you. And then 55, 53 differential, 54 also works for the off throttle. Right, left geometry, the usual. 3111 on the suspension, 41 on the anti-roll bars, and 3439 on the ride height, 153, 4, 5, whichever you like to use. And then tire pressures, they're all 1 psi from minimum, so plus 1.0 for all tires, or plus 10 clicks for all tires basically. And there you go. So if you have stayed this far, once again I'd like to thank you for watching and supporting the channel. If you love this content, you love more setups, check out the description, my words, check out the description for more setups, or they'll be somewhere on the top right as well, and you can check it out. And now let's head into the track guide here around France. Now let's quickly save this setup before we forget it. And now let's go and watch our best lap time here and how do we tackle France. So the thing to note about France here is that there are a lot of open corners. The whole track is basically a testing track per se, so you'll have a lot of track limits that you have to exploit in order to gain some lap time. So I'll show you how to do that. First of all, coming out of the last corner, if you're going for a qualifying, you can take a wider exit like you saw I did. But if you're not confident with that, you can just take like a normal racing line. It doesn't matter too much, because from the starting line all the way down to the first corner, it's not too far either. You don't really notice the thousands or 2000s that you lose. Now into turn 1, first of all, you want to stay side to right. Be careful though in the race, just a reminder. There might be cars coming out on your right hand side, so you don't want to get into collisions, PSA. And now back to the track guide. So there is a black board on the left hand side, there's a 100-meter board on the left hand side, there's the start of this curve, and then sort of like the discoloration between the white line here, and it's a bit solid around here. So from far off you can see there's a discoloration, so you can use any of these markers as your braking reference. And you want to brake 100% and then slowly, this is my view, yep. So usually when I pass the 100-meter on the left hand side, or as I hit the black box, that's where I brake. And then you want to be trying to look for the apex. It's a bit uphill, it's a bit blind, so you want to be ready to turn in as soon as possible. Down to 5th gear for the first corner. Maybe when you hit the start of this curve, or as the curve is about to start, that's where you want to turn in, and then turn in quite aggressively, and you want to be taking a lot of the curve here, including the sausage here. It's fine in qualifying. In the race, maybe you want to be a bit more to the right, a bit slow as well, to be safe while you're following someone. Now as soon as you're done turning to the left here, you want to open up the steering somewhere in the middle of the track here. Oops, wrong show. Somewhere in the middle of the track, more towards the right, and then you don't want to mount any more than the first layer of curb here, although I prefer to avoid it just to get a smoother exit, and then let the car run wide on the exit here itself, and play with the track limits once again. Push the car on the exit and stay within the track limits, and then you can use the curbs on the entry. You don't want to go on the second layer of curbs because that starts to slow down the car, so stay on the first layer. And then into this Mickey Mouse chicane, Mickey Mouse section in sector 1, you want to be very tight on the entry here. So right after the 100-meter board, again you're playing with track limits around here, as you can see. Down to 5th gear, even 4th gear sometimes. In the race you can go down to 4th, and then take a lot of the entry curve. We can take a lot more actually, but again sometimes the car just RNG, it bounces off, so it's safer to not fully mount it sometimes. So tight on the entry, and then on the left hand side you want to mount as much curve as you can. You can see we are right on the line here from our inside view. You can see we are pretty much on the line here, on the limit. And then start applying throttle while you're still turning. You don't want to be coasting for too long, you'll lose a lot of time there. Apply a bit of throttle, maybe just 20, 30, 40%, and then somewhere in the middle of the track, or left middle-ish, and then you want to open up the entry to the right-hander here. You can downshift to second, just tiny bit of brake. You don't want to be too tight on the entry curve here, because then it starts to unsettle the car on the exit. It's much safer, like I say, to avoid the curve fully, and then have a smoother exit as well. On the exit here, you want to be, again, pretty much playing with the track limits. You are temporarily going to be accelerating, and as soon as the car is straight, upshift to fourth. Let's see that from the inside view. And then we're accelerating here, and then fourth gear, stay tight on the apex here, and then let the car run wide as you are opening up the steering. So let the car run wide, open up the steering, and then bring back the car somewhere to the middle and get a straight exit onto the Mistral straight around here. DRS activated there, make sure to open that up if you have it. And then it's sort of a long run around here. If you've got low downforce, this is going to be beneficial for you. You can easily attack someone or force someone to use up their battery on these two straights, but you have to be having good momentum in sector 1 and 2 first of all. Now you want to be braking right as the 100-meter board on the right hand side starts, or the start of this curve here. In qualifying, again, you can take the curve on the right hand side, but I tend to avoid it because, again, the goddamn RNG just sometimes doesn't, it's not in your favor. It bounces the car and it can affect your entry and exit coming out of the chicane. So again, to be safe, you can partially take it, you know, without going fully on it, and then brake down to fourth gear. And then you want to be mounting as much curve as possible on the entry. This will help you to open up the exit here. Again, once again, I say you can take the exit curve here, a bit, the first layer of it, to help open up the exit. I'm avoiding it just because RNG, why not, right? And this is again safer, but not necessarily the faster way. And let the car run wide on the exit again. Here, once you're already accelerating quite quickly, right, you can go full throttle, and you have to make sure your steering is straight, otherwise you're going to spin on the exit here. So take a look like this. You have to be fully straight and still within track limits, and then accelerate, stay tight to the left, gains you a few more thousands or maybe a few hundreds here. And then you want to avoid this painted white and blue part, because if you run over that, for some reason it slows you down, which is kind of dumb. I don't know why, but either way you want to be avoiding it. It's a good tactic though if you want to push someone out wide and, you know, force them to be within track limits, but you can make them slow down without them actually slowing down. So that's a good way to, you know, squeeze them out within track limits. So use this advantage if you need to, right? And then keep it straight down to the next part, the seniors, the double right-hander as they call it. So you want to be tight on the entry here, stay as close as you can, gains you a few more thousands, gains you the momentum as well, you don't scrub off too much speed. And then now again, you can take the first layer of curbs here on the left hand side. You don't want to go any more than that, it starts to bottom out the car and slow it down. And then this part, the double right-hander, now this is the double right-hander that we're talking about, right? So the entry to seniors, you want to, in qualifying, you want to throw the car in as fast as you can, and then downshift to fifth, stay somewhere in the middle of the track. We run just a bit wide here, but that's okay. You want to avoid touching the white line on the exit. I touched it a bit and gave me a bit of understeer, but nothing that is unmanageable here. In the qualifying, in the race situation, you want to avoid touching the white line because it has less grip and it's going to pull you off track and give you understeer into the next part here. So again, I like to take it wide entry and then cut back in because it's a bit cambered on the inside here, it's a bit bumpy, but it's a good line to take, the tighter line if you're going for an overtake on someone around here. And then let the car run wide again on the exit. So let's take a full speed view of this again, how it actually feels. Down to fifth and then accelerate. You are on the throttle, you are still turning, you want to open up the steering while you keep accelerating. By this time, right around here, you're already full throttle. If you're not full throttle, then that means you are taking the entry too slow or too fast, either way, or too tight. And then bring back the car over to the right hand side, and just as there's a few markers around here on the left hand side, there's this white and red curve that is starting. I usually use that as my reference. So I stay wide on the entry and then brake down to third gear, bring the car back to the apex, late apex here, and it's a bit off cambered, so that means the track falls away from you. This part where we are, it's higher, and then the exit on the right hand side is a bit lower, so it's going to make the car unstable on exit. It's not going to help you to rotate. So you're going to be very gentle on the throttle here. At the same time, open up the steering again to make sure the car is stable while you're accelerating. Take as much curb as you can on the exit, just to make sure you're carrying all the momentum from the previous corners. And then on the exit, you can maybe just come back to the tarmac here, the black part of the racing track. But before you turn in again, you want to take the curbs as much as you can with the track limits around here, and then throw the car in for this left-hander. So you'll probably still be accelerating quite a bit in full throttle in qualifying. Maybe in a race you want to be lifting around here already, and that's normal, right? In a race you're heavier with fuel, so stay tight, or you can go wider and cut back in depending on how you feel it's faster for you, how you gain time. And then down the third gear, and then I avoid taking the whole curb because again RNG, and sometimes it just throws the car off, so it's safer to avoid it. You can take this part towards the end just a bit, and it's not really going to help the car rotate or not rotate, so it's just okay to take it. And last corner here, if you can spot on the left hand side, there is the start of this curve, which is here, the 2-layer curve. So the start of this, if you can spot that, that's good for you. I usually used to use that in the previous games as the braking reference here. Now I can still spot it from far apart, or you can also use just the apex itself. You feel when it's in your peripheral vision, you feel like okay, it's a good time to start turning in, you can go for it. Brake and then stay tight on the entry. You want to be applying a lot of lock here to make the car turn into the corner, and then again quickly open up and then take as much curb on the exit. In qualifying, in the race maybe not so much. If you're following someone, you're afraid of spinning out, so DRS wide open and stay tight to the left. If you are going for a qualifying run, maybe gains a few thousand, scrubs off less speed, and there you go. That is a lap around France. Finally, it's done, and let's hope we don't have to do this again. The amount of corner cutting you have to do just to gain a few thousands, a few hundreds here and there, it's quite painful to do, quite frankly. And I hope I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, stay safe, and bye bye.